Hey, welcome to Witchpolice Radio. The cool thing about this episode we're going to do right now is it's someone that I've interviewed before, but in a very different setting. And I think that maybe a good place to start off would just be to talk about that because it's been a few years now, but we met doing an interview like this, but a video one with the people from Mum's House, and that was I think it might have been my first appearance guest hosting for them too. So it was kind of cool that you were the test case, I guess, for them having me around a few more times to do the show. But before we even get into that, if you want to just introduce yourself and maybe give a bit of background about what you do musically, we can go from there.
Sure. My name's Jason Eastwood. That's funny. That's your first time that you interviewed for that. I thought you did it all the time, but it was
No,
great.
they just called me. They asked me kind of randomly, "Do you want to help out and do a couple episodes?" So I said, "Sure."
That's awesome. But no, I basically I play. I do all kinds of music. I do solo guitar music. I do kind of psychedelic rock, and I've recorded a lot of different music actually through the last 35 years that I've been doing it. So I think of myself as a guitar player, singer, songwriter, and a solo guitarist. I've written music for a symphony in Nova Scotia. So
Oh, cool.
um, I started just working with tape recorders and a little 4-track tape when I was in grade 8 and recording my own music. And because of Randy Rhodes, I took some
Right on.
classical guitar lessons, so I got right into that. And then when I was in high school, I played with Big Dave McLean, and I got really into the blues after that. So I mean, I'm like I guess a musical kind of traveler where I like the journey. I like all the styles. So I've played in many different kind of incarnations of bands and solo music over the years.
Well, I think that was kind of the cool thing about you too is that you've been doing this for a long time and not necessarily in the spotlight. Like you've been working with other people, you've been doing all kinds of music that maybe isn't necessarily getting heard by large crowds, but it's out there, and you're just like kind of involved. You have like a hand in all these different baskets, and you've been active for decades now.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think of myself as kind of an underground musician because I've never really been in that scene, that main
Yeah.
scene. But even in high school, I would do 4-track tapes and just get together with my band friends, and we'd record songs and write songs. And then I got into jazz really heavily in high school, and but as far as the scene, so back doing those 4-track albums and playing with just local bands in the area. We never really we were always trying to do something different. At least I was trying to do something different, record my own music. But anyway, I moved to BC in 1999 from Winnipeg, and from there I moved there with a guy named Electric John Negrich, and he's been a friend of mine. He's also a spoken word artist and kind of an underground artist, and he records a lot of music as well. So me and him started doing stuff together when we were 7 years old, just with tape recorders. And we had a band called Bass Ship, and
Okay.
and and this was in the '90s when I kind of stopped playing guitar. I actually started teaching guitar at a place called Colts Music in McPhillips when I was in high school, and I taught there actually from about 1988 till 1999. So I was playing guitar, like I was teaching like 70 students a week, and
Well,
I got pretty sick of guitar playing. So I got really into the electronic scene. And what I did with that band is I bought an MPC 2000 in 1997. Actually, me and him both bought it. We walked into Long and McQuaid and on Corda, and they hadn't really heard of it yet. So that was a funny story actually, because we had $3,000 on us, and we looked like scruffy
yeah.
street bum kids, musicians, and nobody would serve us. And I love Long and McQuaid. I've worked there now. But I told this to the Jack Long who runs Long and McQuaid. But we walked in there with $3,000, and we couldn't get anybody to help us. And John, he's a little bit of a hothead. He goes, "Here you go. This is the sale you're losing today." And he holds up the $3,000. We're walking out. Glenn McRae's like, there was a manager said, "Wait, wait, wait, wait. What do you guys need?" And we bought this incredible MPC 2000. So if you don't know what an MPC is, it's an incredible beat machine. Like all
Yeah.
hip hop in the '90s was made on it. And we started doing electronic music and hanging out with Aaron Funk and Fraser Runciman. He used to play with the Exploited, and
Okay.
goes by Fanny, at least in the '90s. But we played some shows. We actually played some shows with Aaron. That was really cool. Venetian Snares, for anybody who doesn't know who he is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was a neat scene because it was raves too. It was we used to play at the Horseshoe, which is a weird. There's a giant tiger there right
Yeah.
now.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
across. Anyway, so that went on. We moved out to BC to write more music in the mountains. We rented a little trailer on the Columbia River in Golden, and we did that for a few years. We played Vancouver to Winnipeg. We played a couple more gigs. We came back to the Pyramid and played. That band broke up, and then I moved back to Golden, where I lived there for 8 years. And I started a band with two other gentlemen, Jeremy Green and Colin Sykes. Colin's from Winnipeg too, called Disaster Man.
Okay.
And we probably played, I think we played over 700 shows. Like we headlined the Rock Pit at the Shambhala Festival for 6 years in a row. We played the Vancouver scene, the Calgary scene, and that was great. We put out two albums, one in 2005 called Prepare to Be Attacked, and one in 2010 called Astronomy Lesson Number Two. And we sold all those just doing shows. So
Yeah.
we had a good following, and the mountains was great. It was a ski town, so it was a great place to do. The thing is, we were playing all originals too, which I kind of call it collage rock. I guess if you want to link us to a band, we were huge Ween fans.
Okay. Okay.
The reason I call it collage rock is because we ripped off every style and just did our own songs based on it. And then then I moved to Halifax actually in 2007, and I went to university again. I just showed up and I played classical guitar. They said you're in. My girlfriend was actually going to the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, so I said I'll go with you. We got it because Disaster Man really was. We were kind of at the end of our rope,
Right.
even though we played for in the summer for years after. So anyway, I did a classical guitar. I started doing classical guitar performance degree, but then I realized I could already do that, so I took a composition degree, and that was way cooler because
I
for
bet. Yeah.
3 years there, I got to write for string quartets, and I won a little competition, so I got to write a piece for Symphony Nova Scotia, and they played it. And then I got a job teaching at the Dalhousie. They gave me a job teaching a course called History and Techniques of the Guitar.
Oh, cool.
That was really cool. It was like the whole classical world, and then I played in jazz combos there. But then my whole family's in Winnipeg, so I had to move back here. I thought I'm not going to make my life in Halifax. It's just like a different country, and
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway, I bought a bunch of different things fell into it. So 15 years later, I moved back to Winnipeg after I'd moved, and it was funny. It was just like I was right back where I started because I was working at Long and McQuaid when I first got back here, and I was like, "This is when I left. I was kind of like this," but
Well,
it was like I was in a different dimension for 15 years.
yeah. Yeah.
But it was great. And then from then, I joined a bunch of bands locally, and I put out an album called LinkedIn, and I started doing guitarfulness. I said, if I'm going to sell music, it has to be as a health product. I started playing yoga concerts when I was in Halifax. People love this kind of style of guitar I invented. So I started a website to sell relaxing guitar music, and I've put out like 18 of these albums, these
Wow.
relaxing guitar albums, and it does pretty well. And so I've been focusing on that a lot in the last 3 years. But I played in some bands like with people might know John McGowan. He's like a local punk. Kind of guru from back when I remember I met him when I was 18. He taught me a lot about music. He's like a
Cool.
musicologist who used to work at CQW. And we had a band called The Strange Things. We played around a lot. And then once The Strange Things broke up, I played with Personality Crisis for their final show. And that was amazing because those are a band I grew up like.
Yeah.
Mitch Funk, I'd go see it with Honest John. I'm like, this band is scary and awesome at the Rendezvous and things like that. And then
Yeah.
next thing I know, they through Colin Bryce, who played with the Dub Rifles. He's a friend of mine, and he said they're unfortunately Jimmy Green, who plays with originally with Personality Crisis. He ran into all this trouble getting on a plane and getting out here for the show.
Oh,
It was
okay.
a sold out show at the Pyramid already. And anyway, they called me the Tuesday. The show was on the Friday. I couldn't even get a ticket because it was sold out. I was trying
I
to.
remember that being sold out. Yeah. I remember wanting to go.
Yeah. And so amazingly, I couldn't even get to the show. And then they called me on the Tuesday night. And they said, "Can you learn all our songs by Friday?" I said, "I'll do my best, man." So I just
That's
put on
awesome.
they sent me the MP3s, and I listened to them 24/7 for 3 days and transcribed the songs, and we pulled it off. And it was amazing. I was like, wow, this is like, talk about welcome back to Winnipeg. It's like, these are my idols. And we're
Well,
playing.
I like how just over the past 10 minutes of talking, you've already sort of illustrated what we said at the beginning about how you've been sort of involved in everything. Because that whole story there, just from originally being in Winnipeg to finally ending up back here and then doing that show, there's like 7 or 8 genres of music that you've been
Well,
involved with, like in that time, right? And so many different projects and stuff. So what do you like? Where do you place yourself on the map as far as music goes? Because you've done so much already.
Yeah, I mean, I like being kind of a musical journeyman,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's odd because I think back to when I really started playing guitar, and I took some lessons at the University of Manitoba from this guy Paul Hammer, who was the professor there, and he says teaching me classical stuff, and then I was playing some blues stuff. He said, "Well, show me some of that." He said, "Well, what about this rock?" And I could play like this. Every style you would play for me, like on a recording. He said, "Well, you can play anything you hear." I said, "Well, I just love all this stuff. It's all music to me." So I've
Yeah.
just liked that ever since. But now I'm trying to focus more. Like I've been doing the solo guitar music just because it's paying. I
Sure.
was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
wow. I was like, wow. In a day when gigs dried up, I found an online way to actually produce money, music, and that actually pays money. And I had to really get down to marketing and building websites and all that whole scene. And but I produce all the music, I write all the music, I do all the websites, the copy, I run all the commerce.
That's
So
all part of it now, right? That's you have to basically to survive.
absolutely, absolutely. So now that I've really honed that in with the guitarfulness, because and it was good to use that because it was like on the internet you kind of need. Unfortunately, I saw a Neil Young artist interview that said this. He said, music doesn't really just sell itself. Like he
No.
says, that's why I'm doing this interview right here. He's like, this is I should wish I could just record and just go back to the studio, and we all do, right? But it's like. So that's why I thought if I'm going to sell music on the internet, it has to be, for a meditation and yoga and a cause. And I could make that stuff up. It just kind of came through me and it was so easy. So, and I've had really great response, like people all over the world that they send me emails about how they listen to it every morning, every night. And it's a weird demographic. It's different from all the rock stuff I
Of
do.
course, yeah.
But anyway, I've seen you're right, and it's all about figuring out how to be independent now and do all your own marketing and do all that stuff.
Especially with what the world has gone through the past couple of years, right? It's just you can't. There aren't any shows like you said. They've dried up, and you need to find some alternate way. And that's I think a very unusual path you've taken, but obviously it's working for you, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, it is an unusual path, and it's now I'd like to apply that to going back to recording some more rock and some singer songwriter stuff, and that's what I really I love when I can record all the instruments and songs. Songs is what I love to do the most.
Yeah.
Now the thing is, I really struggled with vocals for a long time, but I've been working on my singing a lot for the last 2 years. So I think that's going to help with my new recordings that I'm working on. I'm just trying to always get better at that because I always approach music from the guitar since I started, playing that when I was 11, and that was everything,
It
right?
makes sense. Yeah, yeah. That's your full your everything kind of goes out from there, right? It's like a
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That makes a lot
So
of sense.
so now I kind of want to. I just want. I did an album called LinkedIn, well, in 2017.
With a great cover.
Yeah, thanks very much. That was for a friend's art project in Halifax, where it's me eating a stack of hot dogs. Uh, but the now I'd like to get back to recording all the songs like I used to do just when I was 13, 14, 15, get starting out with a 4-track recorder and just a drum machine, a bass, and a guitar and
Yeah,
vocals. And I use Logic, and I've got a home studio here that I'm getting better at producing at all the time. And so I'm going to start launching some more singer songwriter music, right? And I did another album called Handlebar Burrito in 2009. It's more folk. It's all acoustic guitars and vocals. So I just love breaking the stylistic barriers and trying different things. It doesn't really work that great when we're just talking about marketing. I mean,
yeah.
this is the whole thing. It's like, well, what you got to brand yourself. You have to have an idea, and I'm working at that too. I'm trying to figure that out. So for my next singer songwriter stuff that I put out, it's like, well, what am I saying here? What category do I fall into? And that's all as part of the process. But it's like that's the stuff that's it's harder for me to think about rather than just saying, oh, this is song is going here, and I'm just going to record it like this. You know.
Does it feel like you're using almost a different part of your brain when you're recording like the meditation stuff versus a rock song versus a folk song versus an electronic piece? Like, or does it all come from the same place with you? Like, do you have to kind of compartmentalize yourself, I guess, and think, okay, now this is going to be um, something relaxing, something chill, versus this is a song that is a rock song or whatever.
Yeah, there definitely is a certain compartmentalization that you have to do into, like, for the relaxing guitar stuff. I have to put myself in a mode of, um, this is going to be using certain slow rhythms and and the certain themes that I've come up with and certain frequencies and scales that I just know from studying, relaxing music and healing music around the world that works. So there's a parameters that I like to set in, right? So
Okay.
for instance, that I'll sit down with a classical guitar and I'll say, here's what I'm going to use as my musical devices for this piece. Now, when I play, when I write a song on guitar with and vocals, if I'm doing an acoustic folk tune, I kind of do the same thing. I say, well, now I'm going to sing a melody, and I'm going to use this style of voice, but after I decide on those parameters, if I sit down and compose a beat using Logic, right, and I put some grooves together using my MPC or whatever, it's always like, here's I'm going to define the parameters that I'm going to write with, but then I try my best to always use that Charlie Parker, um, philosophy of, like, you'll learn your theory, but when you play, just play. So I just try to forget it and just sit down and just feel it and play. As much as that's a cliche, that always works the best. Like a lot
Yeah.
of these classical guitar albums, like I play the music, I'll play the songs twice, record them, and I'll never play them again. And then I hear them for, like, people listen to this stuff over and over and they love it. And it's great because I know it came from somewhere else because I just kind of didn't think about it. So,
Yeah.
and whether it's a subconscious or whatever, it's like that's always the best music.
Totally. Yeah. Something that is just like, it's genuine because there's no there's no nothing forcing it in any direction. It's just what kind of organically comes out of someone's mind through a guitar or a piano or a horn or whatever. Right?
Absolutely, and just there's no logic involved. It's like there's a little bit of setup, and then you kind of let it go. And I've done a lot of music where I've really thought painstakingly about every note. That's what classical composition is, right? And that's what I think lacks in that. That's why I got out of that whole scene, really, because to me it was too much thinking and not enough feeling. Like, I just like to pick up a guitar and just I can play a solo, and I'm like, wow, I could have never thought of that.
Yeah.
Like, or ripping, blues solo, or even a riff. If I get in a mode, if I'm jamming with somebody, we come up with something. It's usually going back to that initial inspiration, that idea, and then the trick is, the real key is, and with any style, is you get that initial inspiration, but then how are you going to refine it? There's all the craftsmanship comes into
Right.
play.
Yeah. Because it's very different releasing just the complete brain vomit of everything and just
Yeah.
putting it out versus
Oh,
taking it and honing it and choosing the parts that work and everything like that. Yeah.
that's what really separates, I think, a lot of the projects I was in from not going anywhere. Even though they were great, we'd have a band or something get together and make a recording. It's like, this is fantastic. Like, right off the bat, you have this great inspirational idea, but then it's like, okay, well, now here comes the work. We've got to really kind of, refine this into something that is going to make the best of the idea. And
Yeah.
that's, you could sit there. I've worked on songs and in my computer where, I'm moving a beat around for weeks. Like, you can really get lost in it, and that's
Well,
you have
it's about knowing where to stop, right? It's about knowing where to let it exist as itself rather than, overworking it and then you edit it too much, it's going to lose the initial it of it, right?
absolutely, absolutely, and that's, with every style. I mean, that's why
That's with
jazz.
everything really creative at all. The painting, writing a book,
Yeah,
anything. It's just you spend too much time refining it, and it's gonna lose the essence of it.
exactly. So that's where it all comes. It's knowing when to say when, and it's knowing. It's also when you're doing that like you said, that brain dump or that inspiration when you're just going for it and you're just getting all the ideas coming down. It's having that taste to go back and recognizing the good ideas too, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
that's a lot of it. So, I mean, that's kind of the process I try to apply to everything. But when I'm doing the guitar stuff, it's so much easier to record an album because it's just one instrument. Like balancing drums, like programming drums and making beats, and then playing bass, and then doing the vocals, the melodies, and balancing that all. That's all takes a lot longer, which is why I haven't put out any. I put out a couple songs in the last year. One's called Town of Redemption, one's called Number One, and Tomorrow's Rain. Just kind of trying to get back into that of producing whole songs, right?
yeah.
But it takes a lot more work than just doing solo, instrument stuff for sure.
What is I mean, I know that, like we've mentioned, the shows are dried up because of the pandemic going on. Things are hopefully going to get better. Who knows? I mean, I record these ahead of time, so I always get nervous about saying things are going to get better because by the time it comes out, something worse could have happened. But like, assuming next week suddenly shows are back to complete normal and you can play wherever you want. You can. What is sort of your goal, I guess, with new music you're making to be able to put it out there in the world? Are you going to just sort of mainly focus on recording, or are you gonna go out there and trying to get as many shows as you can as well?
No, I'd like to get. I'd like to with this next album. I'm gonna totally. My plan is to get a band together and perform it, even if I just get the Park Theater or something for a night or and and do that kind of performance. But yeah, uh, that's the whole idea. Maybe play definitely play some shows. But that's that's the next step probably in 3 or 4 months. Luckily, the pandemic is I don't have to think about that right now. Like it just seems like a bad time to start thinking about gigs, but I'm definitely
Yeah.
thinking I'm going to perform the songs. And then as far as guitar performances and stuff, I played a lot of those and just solo things. I'd maybe be interested in doing some acoustic shows where I can do some vocals, but I actually have a duo right now. We're called the Incidentals, and we just released our first album called Introducing the Incidentals, and with Rob Patchell. He plays with the a lot like the Wind Ups, and he's
Right.
done a lot of local music. So he plays ukulele, I play classical guitar, and we do an Aphex Twin cover. We do some really interesting stuff that we've
Cool.
written. He's written a lot actually, and so we're hoping to get some gigs as well. And yeah, I mean, I'm kind of excited to play live again. I'm getting all ramped up to play live. I love playing live. There's nothing like that electricity of the crowd, and I
Yeah.
was lucky to do tons of that when I lived out in BC and in Winnipeg too. But out there, it was just easy to play gigs all the time. You tour around to these little ski towns, right?
Oh, I guess, yeah, and you got a built-in audience there too, right? Because people are hanging out after skiing, and yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
What are the things that I know we mentioned at the beginning, but like that show that I met you on however many years ago, for people who didn't know, Mom's House was it was kind of like this, but it was a video project, and they had live performances, and you were one of the guests, and I talked to you for like 15 minutes, and then it was cut with different songs you performed, and I think that like that almost seems like at this point in time, like it was ahead of its time because everyone's kind of finding ways to do little videoed performances and put out music in a different way. And it sucks that they stopped doing it because that would have been like the perfect timing. And I feel like some of the stuff you're talking about too is a good example of someone sort of taking advantage of this shitty situation we're in and finding ways to still be a creative. I mean, with the meditation music and stuff, that's like I said, is unusual, but you're finding ways to still be involved. So that sort of connects to what you're saying at the beginning too about just all of these projects you've done. It doesn't seem like too much of a leap for you to be doing that when you've already done classical and rock and blues and and so on and so forth. So I almost feel like your kind of nebulous identity as a musician has helped you in this time where things are out of whack.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's always helped me throughout my whole life. It's just like I've always been able to find a gig because I just never would say, "Oh, I don't know about that style." Like I'll play with your reggae band or your
Yeah,
folk band, or I could teach, or I could, and I could write your soundtrack or whatever, right? So that nebulous idea is correct, and yeah, and that Mum's House that was a great show, and you're
it
right.
was
It's
cool.
too bad that the production value was amazing because they had great cameras and they would film it in just this living room, but it had a beautiful set, and it was a great way to get. They kind of stopped right before I think everyone was starting to watch
Yeah,
live performances. Like live streaming just took off, and they kind of stopped doing that. But that was cool. That I did a Tom Waits song on there, "Going Out West," and I did
yeah,
"Calculator Watch," a song off my LinkedIn album.
yeah. That was it was
Yeah,
cool. It was.
and
I
you
wish
asked me
I
about
wish
the
that I want to do that. Like I wish that this was that. I wish we could be doing
oh
this in like a cool set and with all these cameras and stuff. But this I'll have to do for now. But yeah,
well, this is my whole idea now too. Is like I want to set up more a studio where I also record in, but I want to make it a more of a broadcast studio to do like just live performances and just talk about guitar, maybe like do
yeah,
some of this kind of thing, but where it's like I'm explaining things on the guitar and teaching a little bit. And I do that with the Guitarfulness. I do like live videos and put them out there. It was just me playing these ambient classical guitar songs that I write, kind of, and they do well. Like my YouTube channel, it's just Guitarfulness if you want to check it out, and that's Fulness,
okay,
like mindfulness but guitar, and so that YouTube channel is kind of done well. But I'd like to do something exactly like Mum's House, except have it going all the time, so I could just do a little, version of a song
yeah.
and get feedback and have people on and kind of like what and like what you're doing exactly is so great. But yeah, you could if you had the Mum's House. That's why it was cool because you came and did the interview, and then there's all the video to go along with it,
Yeah, it
right?
was neat. It was neat. I so wherever those guys are now, I sincerely hope they, they try to pull it back together again. One of the things I meant to ask you earlier was, you're talking about when you started out and playing, recording these 4-track songs and everything. Do you still have any of that stuff? Like, are you one of those guys who holds on to everything? I'm one of those guys who holds on to everything. I have tapes of all my old bands and stuff, but do you keep that stuff?
Absolutely. Like that was it was a 4-track X15, and I bought it off my I was taking classical guitar lessons from the guy at the university, and he told me to take lessons from this guy named Mike Dayer, amazing classical guitar player, and he was into recording. So
Cool.
he had his own studio, but he sold me his 4-track, which I had my free press, I was delivering papers and I had all this. I think I had to borrow $100 off my mom or something. I remember it was $400 when I bought it, and it was amazing to me because I could layer things up.
Yeah.
So and with I still have the I've got two milk crates of the cassettes.
Nice.
I got the 4-track recorder, and I'm always doing new things. So how you keep this stuff, but it's like you never really go back to it because you're always doing something new. Like, so I keep meaning to just get them over here. Like they're in my parents' basement actually. Plug it into my um, computer and just dump the tracks all in straight up, and then I could remix them.
Yeah.
And hear what I did back then because I think there was some pretty wild stuff. I mean, I'd like to hear it because I remember it as being great. But I mean, that's in high school. I'd do songs for everybody. It doesn't matter what project. They would come over to my house. We'd do a song on steroids or To Kill a Mockingbird or like, The Handmaid's Tale, whatever
Yeah.
book.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
Well, I'm glad to hear you kept it because I think that like especially now that everything is very easily recorded because everyone has even on their phone they can record some kind of quality. Like there's no reason not to preserve everything. I mean, if someone's bad practice, tape it. Maybe something really cool happened. Tape it
Yeah,
is I guess the old time
yeah.
language, but you record it and then maybe there's something useful there that could be of
Well,
value. And it just seems it shocks me. I mean, I haven't been in a band in well over a decade, but it shocks me that like people aren't just recording everything because you can.
especially now. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
with a Zoom recorder, I mean, it's a digital file, is nothing. Like I've always done that, and actually, yes, I have a DAT machine too, and I think I have an 8-act. Even
Oh,
I don't know
nice.
if it was a VHS thing that we rented to record some stuff, me and some friends back in the mid 90s. But the DAT machine, I've got like stacks of DAT tapes. That because that was the main thing I used from probably like 99 to 2006 or something, with Cubase and a DAT machine. But and then when we played in Disaster Man, we would go around, we record all our shows on mini discs. So
Oh yeah, yeah,
my friend Jeremy, who was the bass player, he's got this all stacked away at his place. But these mini discs of probably hundreds of our shows, which, again, I'd like to go back and hear one day. But and then after that, we switched to the Zoom recorders. This one of those H4s, like those
yep,
things are awesome. We'd put that at the back of the room every show and tape it. So it's nice to have.
for sure, for sure. Well, again, I'm glad to hear you have it. I mean, hopefully one day you have the time and the wherewithal to just sit down and go through some boxes, because I bet there's some cool stuff in there.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I bet there is.
So for people who are new to your music, and want to hear you, what's the best way to find you online at this point? I know you have a bunch of projects. Where would you sort of send people to find your stuff?
Well, you can go to at Guitarful. Yeah. Well, let's see. Like, there's Jason Eastwood. Jason. Okay. Facebook/Jason G Eastwood is my Facebook.
Okay,
It's, Instagram is at Jason G Eastwood. Um, Guitarfulness is at Facebook/Guitarfulness. I've got lots of videos on there, and then YouTube Guitarfulness. I've just started a YouTube channel, Jason Eastwood. So, and then JasonEastwoodMusic.com. So, I mean, any of those, you can always find me.
cool. And so you're all over the place. Someone just looks for your name and it's going to turn up in some fashion. Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah.
awesome, awesome.